Welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. Joel Brown, and we're just about to kick off our panel entitled The Augmented Doctor, a Paradigm Shift for Healthcare. So I'd like to do is to introduce my panel for you this afternoon. So as you probably can see there, I'm a medical doctor. I'm also the chief clinical officer at Bionabu, which is essentially what we're building there is a platform to facilitate better collaboration in the MedTech space between involving clinicians as well as those who are students and from other backgrounds who are interested in MedTech. I'm a GP. I do that 3 days a week, and as I said, I'm really excited about this particular topic because as a clinician, I think the future, we should as clinicians be more willing to embrace technology to one, make our work better, more efficient, and obviously to improve the patient experience. So I'm just going to ask each member of the panel just to introduce themselves, just say where they're from. I'm from the UK, if I didn't mention that as well. It should be clear from my accent, hopefully. To say where they're from, what company they represent, and why they're interested in this particular topic for the panel today. If you've got questions, of course, quite happy for this to be really interactive. I want this to be really useful for yourselves. So just starting from my right, if you just introduce yourself. Next person. Do we have to pass the mic?
I believe we all have mics, so no need for that. So, hi everyone, so nice to be here. I'm honored to be among such experts in this panel. I do apologize for my voice. I was, traveling from Bulgaria to Malta yesterday, and I got colds from the AC of the airplane. Doesn't matter. So it almost sounds like I do have some kind of data privacy for, anti-cloning my voice. Anyway. So my name is Georgi Kostadinov, and I'm an AI expert. I'm working in the field of AI for over 15 years now. So I'm a co-founder and CTO of 𝐂𝐿-𝐴, a company that wants to make preventable deaths and suffering a thing in the past by coupling thermography, artificial intelligence, and medical science to early detect all kinds of medical science corresponding to vascular pathologies. And I'm really enthusiastic about this topic, mainly because as part of Kelvin, we do believe that the future of healthcare is the connected, digitally connected healthcare, patient-centric healthcare, and healthcare that AI assists the specialists. And yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Hugh Harvey. I'm a consultant radiologist by background, so I'm interested in this space because people have been telling radiologists that we're all going to be out of jobs because of AI and technology. It's not true, but I'm very excited about the future of it being augmented. I'm currently managing director of a digital health consultancy called Hardian, where me and my team help companies in this space generate the evidence for regulatory clearances and for health economics assessments. So super excited to be on this panel.
Hi everyone, my name is Lilac Mandeles. I'm from Israel. I'm the board director of Meuhedet, which is the third largest health organization in Israel. We actually serve more than 1.3 million patients, and we own more than 300 clinics. We have private hospitals and different institutes. We also are big employers for physicians. We employ more than 4,000 physicians. And Meuhedet in general is a very innovative health organizations where we implement different types of technologies that we may want to talk about it later on. I'm also the founder and the CEO of TechforCann Accelerator, which is an accelerator for early stage innovations in the area of healthcare, medical devices, pharma, biotech, you name it. So very happy to be here.
Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Ashwin Venkatesh. I'm a London-based academic junior doctor. I'm a full-time clinician, but I also work part-time for a company called Nodr, which is essentially an app that's aiming to change the way that doctors interact with their daily workflows and replace the traditional pen and paper jobs lists. I also do a lot of things related to medical education, so I can speak about that as well. Yeah, excited to talk about how medicine and the way we practice it is going to change in the future and how it's changing even now.
Cool. So I'm the last in the round. Very excited to be here. My name is Franz Pfister. I'm a medical doctor and data scientist by training. I serve as the CEO and I'm one of the co-founders of the company DeepC. We have developed an AI platform, cloud-based, where we integrate all different AI vendors in the radiology space and then enable clinical customers to access all of those great applications through one installation and one process. Why am I excited about the topic? That's actually our everyday job, augmenting radiologists with AI, and I'm super happy to be part of the panel.
Excellent, excellent. The first thing I thought, direction we could go. I mean, when I saw the title of this, the Augmented Doctor, I kind of had this sort of vision of doctors wearing like sort of fancy gadgets on, and they're able to utilize these devices. And I kind of went super futuristic thinking, but it doesn't have to be that complicated. So I don't know if maybe somebody from the panel could talk about perhaps like what do you see the Augmented Doctor being? Just give some insights. Anyone could start out.
I could tell you about what we have implemented in our Meuhedet. We actually implemented an hybrid OR for children, where the corona sped everything up in terms of timing, and we found ourselves that we had some digital interactions, obviously with physicians, but they weren't effective enough. So we have coupled with an industry medical device that's called 𝐂𝐿, where this medical device actually can see everything that the doctors needs to see from the ear, from the mouth, from all over. So it actually gives them an online accurate vision, but also temperature-wise and all different types of vitality aspects. And patients were buying it on a subsidized price, and each digital interaction was very effective. So we actually saved a lot of interactions, because before we already had digital visits, but they weren't so effective. So patients would say, okay, so a physician would say, okay, come back. So instead of one, we got two. So that wasn't working for us. The idea was how come technology can decrease the amount of time spent and making it more accurate, real time. So that was a very, for example, a very successful initiative in our organization, for example.
That's just, thank you for sharing that. I'd love to be able to hear how some of this is being applied in radiology. I know that we've got some panel experts who can talk a bit about that.
So I think what's quite interesting in the field of radiology, because it's one of the disciplines which is probably most advanced in terms of AI adoption, is a kind of mindset shift that has happened over the last couple of years. As you already said, like a couple of years back, there was a big fear of radiologists getting replaced, which was also triggered by some AI gurus that stated that we can stop training radiologists. That was back in 2016, because like AI will replace them anyways in 5 years. So obviously that hasn't happened, because 2021 passed and there are still radiologists. But what has happened is a kind of mindset shift from that doctors are going to be replaced by AI to radiologists who are using AI in the future, augmented by this technology, are going to replace the ones that choose not to use the technology. And I think that's the mindset that we are experiencing now in the industry and with clinical bodies. And I think it makes a lot of sense. And maybe I can hand over to you, Hugh, and you can like report from your experience.
Yeah, sure. So radiology, as you said, is very well digitized as a clinical speciality. Everything we do now is digital. So it's the perfect environment for new technologies to be deployed. And what we're seeing now is multiple AI products targeted at every single type of imaging that a radiologist looks at, and every type of pathology within those types of imaging, so that it's categorized and subcategorized almost to the limit now of what radiologists are capable of doing. So we have tools now as radiologists, which are just coming on market, that now enable the radiologist not only to open up an image and have things flagged to them that may be abnormal or normal. We now have clinical decision support to say this is potentially X or Y diagnosis. And then they're now going even a step further by suggesting further imaging, further tests, or even possible further treatment for patients. And it's been absolutely phenomenal to see the rise in the breadth of these technologies. They are applied to almost everything we do now in radiology. That said, the underlying theme is that none of this AI is working on its own. It's, as we say in the title of this panel, it's augmenting the radiologists. And there's now significant scientific research come out to show that radiologists who use AI are better than radiologists without AI. And that is absolutely fantastic.
I love what you said, and the comments you made about doctors who embrace this technology, AI, will replace doctors that don't. It reminds me of a very similar quote by, I think Eric Topol said something similar, and that this hysteria and fear around technology necessarily replacing doctors is misplaced, and I think, you know, I like this idea. Now the second part of it talks about being a paradigm shift for healthcare. I mean, do you think that? So I think we're suggesting that we feel like this is the future that is inescapable. What about some clinicians who still feel like there's some resistance? They may be still. How would you kind of convey to those who are still skeptical about this idea that this technology can be of a help to us to help us deliver clinical care? Anyone had any thoughts on that?
Changes is something that is difficult. Whatever you do in life, when you have to change, then there's an adaptation phase. I think the corona actually helped us, persuading physicians that it's even better for them to be open to technology, and then it's not that bad. It's not going to take over of what you're doing. It's just going to make your work to be more effective and more accurate. And I think that we have seen all the time the rate of adaptation is growing. The growth of this rate, it's an amazing thing. Even the ones, the really veteran physicians, not only the young and the restless, I would say, but more of the veteran are embracing it. And there needs to be education around it. There needs to be an implementation plan. And in our HMO, there's a whole unit that's what they're doing. They're educating, they're assisting with digital implementation. And obviously, it's take a while till a big organization will decide what type of technology to embrace or not, because there's a lot of financial decisions around it, and obviously there has to be some kind of a validation research that could show that it would be better than what we're doing today, and that's one of the things that are crucial.
Excellent. I'd love to be able to hear from this chap here from Kelvin, because you spoke really a fantastic talk earlier, just describing some of the technology that you're doing. Just tell us a little bit about how you see that being able to actually help a frontline clinician, and perhaps just to kind of fill in where you see this being a useful tool in the hands of clinicians.
Yeah. So in our opinion, AI technologies, as I mentioned earlier, they should be integrated within the clinical practice as much as possible, because we have a huge patient demand for, due to all kinds of different, conditions, medical conditions that are currently active. Like COVID-19 actually proved to us that the healthcare system aren't optimized enough, and having AI will actually bring much, accelerated decision making within the clinical practice, and will improve the actual the diagnostic process even further. In my opinion, in terms of like whether medical specialists will be open, to such innovation, I do believe that this will happen like from demand from the patients. So if the patients require to be diagnosed by innovative methodologies, then the specialist at some point will have no choice other than using such.
That's interesting. So the patient, almost like their demand actually being what helps to bring these technologies to the fore. That's a really powerful point, a really powerful consideration. One of the things that come to my mind is, okay, so fine, I'm a clinician, I do what I do, I see my patients, and I'm quite interested in tech. I see problems, I see inefficiencies, and sometimes there is this sense where it's like, well, how do clinicians who want to find, tech that will be helpful, will be useful, basically almost like, how do you find that? Because it feels like everybody in this space, there are lots of different companies who are innovating, doing things, and it can feel quite overwhelming and just, I think for me as a clinician, I would love if there was a kind of a more unified way or approach to find tech that is useful, that is regulated, that is not going to be harmful. I just don't know if anyone from the panel has any reflections on that question of the logistical side of enabling clinicians to be able to find useful tech that will help them ultimately and not harm their patients. Yeah, go for it.
Currently, if a clinician wants to use a drug, they look in a formulary. Or if a surgeon wants to use a particular piece of equipment, they will have talked to that manufacturer or that vendor and they'll procure it through that hospital. It's going to be the same for health tech, in that these will have to be procured by health systems, not individual doctors on an individual use case basis. And so, in order for hospital systems to do that procurement, they're going to want to see the clinical evidence and the health economic evidence to show that A, this improves patient outcomes, and B, it is cost effective, i.e. it is either cheaper and better, or ideally both, than the current way of doing things. Then there's the other side, which is the non-hospital-based technology, which is the patient-facing stuff, so things like health apps that you can download from the App Store. There are movements in place to create a segregated part of app stores for clinically approved apps. Because at the moment, you go on the App Store and type in diabetes, you'll get 1,000 apps, but you don't know which one is CE marked or FDA cleared yet. So that needs to be built into those app stores. They are like pharmacies, they are distributors of legally regulated medical devices, and they need to be displayed as such in the App Store. So those will be kind of the two main ways. And then you have in between where you have maybe a general practitioner such as yourself who may not be aware of all the breadth of these regulatory cleared devices that they can use. And I think there's going to be a period of education, and it needs to be put in at earlier stages throughout medical school, throughout your general practice training. I've seen it in the radiology world. We're now teaching about AI to radiology trainees, and the same thing will happen in other specialities, such as general practice.
Really, really powerful reflection, and I think someone needs to lead the charge on building something like that, because I think I could see that the need for that is imminent, more than imminent. And then one other thought, I mean, as a clinician, I got involved in the company Bionabu because I felt like as if I was trying to find out how could I leverage some of my clinical skills and insights to partner with other people who are in industry trying to design and innovate, and it wasn't very clear where to go, because I imagine there could be clinicians in this room who are thinking they want to be able to partner with people who are from have a tech background. I just wonder, I mean, we've got only a few minutes left, if anyone, especially those who've come from a clinical background who have then pivoted towards working in industry, in sort of innovating and helping to design some of these devices. What are your thoughts about how you were able to do that, and why that was important for you as a clinician to move towards that? Anyone? Yeah, go for it.
Take that one. Yeah. So I'm a junior doctor based in London, and as part of my job, obviously I deal with the clinical side of the frontline work that we do, but it's increasingly a trend that we have to get involved in audits, management, research, and all of these different areas that touch upon how we can improve the quality of the services that we deliver. And so innovation is quite a natural extension of that. And there are day-to-day inefficiencies that many of my sort of colleagues and myself, we struggle with. And so looking at sort of new devices and new technologies that are coming into this space, it was quite exciting for me to get involved in Nodr, which is a project that is aiming to improve the way that we work on a day-to-day basis. So I can speak to that, but also speak to sort of medical education as well. So with Nodr, firstly, we still work on a very primitive basis of taking down paper notes of what our day-to-day tasks are. Now that has kind of very clear issues with security, with fidelity, and it's not a very smart way of processing analytics of what you're actually doing day-to-day on the hospital. So we've developed a kind of app that's aiming to substitute for this, and we've got a prototype now that we're going to be testing in pilot sites. So that's all been very exciting. And also I'm involved in a company called 𝐂𝐨𝐬𝐴𝐻, which is an AI-based clinical decision support software. And this is changing the way that we are doing medical education. Now, I was one of the medical students during the era of COVID, where our entire clinical placements were disrupted by the pandemic due to to reduce the footfall in hospitals. And so you can't learn in medicine without seeing patients or interacting with patients. So this company is aiming to develop virtual patients. And now, virtual patient cases that have been processed through the AI software. And the aim would be to help medical students develop their clinical reasoning outside of the clinical workplace so that they can work with more flexibility and whilst improving their clinical reasoning. And so when they do come to the workplace, they're equipped with the relevant skills, reasoning, and knowledge that will help them to make the most out of those time-critical situations. So the way that we teach medical students is changing big time. The way that junior doctors like myself are practicing is changing big time. And the way that I will continue to train is also going to change. And there's some very interesting talks being given at this conference on, for example, how the metaverse is going to change how, for example, I want to be a surgeon. So how I might simulate the operations that I need to practice on without harming a patient in the process. So it's a really exciting sort of time to be a doctor and time to continue to train. I don't think all of these technologies will replace us, but we do need to temper our excitement as well and make sure that everything that comes through is evidence-based and that there's a clear framework for it. And with that message, I think we can make sure that the appropriate interventions are taken on board and that we can start to disinvest in things that no longer serve a purpose in the future of healthcare. So those are all really important sort of facets to shifting the paradigm of healthcare into something that's more productive for everybody.
Powerful, really, really powerful. And I love the fact that you landed on what we're doing for the next generation of clinicians that come through and why medical education needs to be part of this conversation, even the way we educate. That's fascinating. We've only got a few minutes left, and I did want to give an opportunity if there may well be a question from the audience that we could potentially, as a panel, try to respond so it feels a bit more interactive. So feel free, to if you want to shout your question or stand up. There is a question there. Please come. Juliet from Barbados. I'm from Jamaica, sorry. Yes, hi.
Could you indicate, or anyone on the panel, sorry I have to ask the attorney question.
Yeah.
How are medical malpractice providers responding to the change in the use or the expanded use of technology within this arena?
Wow, that's a fantastic question. I suspect you might have something to say.
I can only touch on this from the radiology side. Because that was the first part of medicine where AI was kind of introduced. And I can only talk about it from the European side because that's the jurisdiction in which I work. In essence, they are running to catch up with the rapidly changing paradigm of AI in radiology. I can talk of one example without mentioning the company and the situation. But for instance, let's say you have a radiology AI system which looks for pneumonia on a chest x-ray, a very common use case for AI, and it misses a pneumonia, and it's in a child, and that child ends up dying. That's what's called a serious adverse event. If a radiologist missed it, they would be sued for medical malpractice. Now, if that AI was autonomous, i.e. had full autonomy to do the scan, make the clinical decision, and print a report out without a radiologist in the loop, then the vendor would be completely liable, and the hospital who procured that could be deemed liable. which is why we've seen in radiology, radiologist plus AI. So the radiologist still maintains their professional integrity and responsibility for the accuracy and the final output. But to answer your question, how are the medical malpractice people catching up? I think they're chomping at the bit, going, yeah, bring all this stuff in quickly, early, without evidence, because we're going to make money. So my advice to everyone here is really try and think about responsibility, liability, and make sure that your stuff is safe and effective.
So I think we probably have one more time for one more question, just in the tail end. Anyone else? Brilliant. No, that's fine. Well, thank you so much for every one of the panel members. Well, let's give them a round of applause for their contributions. Yeah, that's brilliant. Feel free to connect to any of us if you want to ask questions afterwards, but we don't want to run over because we know we've been running behind. But yeah, thank you.